The front of the screen is the Bush, my life with the Bush Music Club from day one, but I with this occasion coming up, I just sort of made notes on JD, going through diaries and such, and I may put the notes aside on occasion to talk a little bit freely. I first met John at a sing about night, one of those beauty nights that we held 3 or 4 times a year at the BW Hall in George Street. I'll tell you something about the BW Hall in George Street. My son, who was working for these historic houses, sent me a clipping from the Herald, and somebody had got hold of the ASIO documents 30 years ago and told us lots of interesting things about ASIO, and advertised that there was a little lecture going on in the Justice Museum in Sydney. So the wife and I went to see this, and it turned out that ASIO in the premises opposite the BWIU had a camera up there for years, 24/7. You know, when I say 24/7, for years they had a camera up there watching the front door of the Building Workers Hall. So when it came to sing about, they got all the fogies, all the old age pensioners, everybody coming in and going out. Coming in and going out.
They didn't have to look under the bed.
And as the lecturer said, you could watch these films, she said it was like a time machine. She says the models of cars going past changed, the headlines went up and down. If you put it on fast forward, it would be marvellous. Anyway, right. Back to the stage of the BWIU Hall. I just finished playing a dance, and suddenly there was this character wearing glasses in my ear, asking for me.
Slow down, Jamie.
This was John. It's getting difficult. This is John. He'd been brought to the singer by his girlfriend, later fiancée, and eventually wife. She'd been told about the BMC and Sing About Nights by a friend, and so she took him along, feeling that he'd enjoy it. I think this was a Sing About Night late in 1962, as my diary for 1963 has John's phone number in it. 861642, that sounds quick. He was popular at every weekly meeting after that, and as we quickly found out the many things we had in common, such as enduring love of Irish culture, the labour movement, and the Australian beer culture. John was a school teacher and taught at Burnside Primary School, approximately 1 kilometre from my home in Parramatta. On Fridays, the teachers of all the local schools seemed to congregate at the Woolpack Hotel in Parramatta to drink and talk shop. I was known to join them on several occasions. John went to Armidale Teachers College, a town he described as the arse of Australia, I assume because of the local climate. On qualifying, he was sent to the bush, a habit of certain government departments such as police and medical and nursing and such. I think the BMC might have had this habit to have this who I worked for 40 years. They had this habit too. You'd sort of do a traineeship and they say, "Oh, good, now you're qualified, out to the bush for you." And of course, all us urbanite young city boys didn't like the sound of that at all. But of course, once you hit a nice country town, what happened? Within a week you remember of every club, in another fortnight you're playing footy with a local team, and of course almost guaranteed in 3 months you're engaged to the prettiest girl in town. And when the time came they said, "Oh, you can go back and live in Sydney now." That was an even bigger culture shock. John went to Menindee, a small town somewhere near Broken Hill, where he quickly became part of the local society. Now Brogan says he'd sing, "There are 2 taverns in the town, One is Maidens and the other one is Underdowns, and each weekend we have this golden rule. On Sunday we close for Sunday school." This actually used to happen. There was a law of the land that said all businesses closed for church hours. I assume it was between 8 and 10 or something like that. This means that when you were thrown out of one pub, He went to the other one. Two tubs were handy. Yes. I worked for a little while. I did a little job one time in the town of Griffith. And in Griffith there were 3 hotels, and all 3 were owned by 3 brothers, the O'Farrells. I used to live in the I and my staff used to live in the area hotel, which was run by a gentleman called Aubrey DeVere Farrell. He was like a gorilla. Behind his back they used to refer to him as Strawberry. John's headmaster, his boss in Menindee, was a bloke named Bernie Sheehan, and years later I met him and had all of John's tales confirmed, because they used to. John spent his recreational time in the pub, of course, and he said, of course, with the usual wrong of characters. Of course, the main one I can remember was one gentleman when it was closing time, they threw him out. This man knew he lived just off the end of the bitumen, because through the town there's a stretch of bitumen, then it became dirt road again. So we go off down there, he stamped down the bitumen till he ran out of bitumen and knew his home.
You could write a song about that.
In the British Music Club, John quickly made his name as a political satirist. There was hardly a weekend went by when John wasn't producing a witty parody on current affairs. No politician was safe, and even the royal family got its share. Sing, and fell off of the horse, and Margaret got a divorce. Then that bastard Roddy lusts after her body. He's rather short-sighted, of course. Was it bastard Roddy? I wasn't bound to Roddy, or am I rewriting the Dengate stuff? Looking at the record notes on our first festival album reads, when John Dengate came into the band, he brought with him his guitar and an ability to write songs at the drop of a hat. It's a poor week when John doesn't turn out at least one song of acid comment on current events. Then I realised that this was our 10th anniversary album. 10th anniversary, think of it, now we're coming up to the 60th. About that time, my diary reveals we were having a lot to do with a bloke named Peter Whitlock. He was an ABC producer and presented a weekly program called The Land and Its People, and was happy to employ the Bush Music Club, that is concert party, for music in his program. The last time I saw Peter was at the club's 10th anniversary dinner, held at the Chinese restaurant in Dixon Street. At that time he was preparing for a job shift to ABC New Guinea. I didn't see him after that. All money that the concert party earned was fed back into the club for the purpose of financing Sing About magazine. 12th of February 1964 reveals that I broke my left wrist, which stopped me a bit. But it didn't stop us appearing on the Dave Allen Show on Channel 9 for a St Patrick's Day program. I sang Dennis O'Reilly, and of course we didn't get paid. I should have had a comma there, I'm sure. I'd organised 2 Irish French to play on this program as well. Bill Crow playing the uilleann pipes and Frank Heffernan on the fiddle, 2 very quite famous local Irish musicians, both long departed of us. I was privileged to be invited to be best man at John and Dale's wedding, 20th of August 1964, at the Wesley Chapel, officiated by Reverend Alan Walker. The highlight in our musical activity was a request to do a small bit of music for a TV program on Project 64 on Channel 9. This is described as a film of a couple of young fellas who decided to navigate the Darling River by canoe. I received a phone call on a Monday, organised John and Alan Scott on Tuesday, and we recorded on a Wednesday. We played potboiler jigs and sang a couple of songs, and they were delighted. The best part was that we received a fee each, which we were not expected to pay into the Bush Music Club. In those days things were tight for us. The 2 young fellows mentioned above were the Leyland brothers, And they filmed their exploits going down the Darling and sold it to Channel 9, who edited it, included the music, and did a very good job of it. And this little film is called Down the Darling, and can still be seen on rare occasions. That resonates made into my script. Now about John. When I heard of John's death, I was absolutely shattered. I thought, oh, my mate's gone. But of course, he wasn't just my mate, he was everybody's mate. Doesn't everybody feel the same? He was so close to everybody. And there's all these other organisations, all these other folk clubs and festivals. As far as they were concerned, he was their John Dengate. But he wasn't their John Dengate, he was our John Dengate. John was first and foremost.
It was everyone's John
He was a Bush Music Club man first and that. And we played together in concert parties and did this and that, travelled all over the place for years and years. We had this marvellous rapport all between us, and eventually when we got to the time of, well, we didn't exactly sort of have a split up on a certain day, but we just sort of just fell apart and dissipated. There were two people who John took note of. The first one's been mentioned. Duke Tritton said to him, if the person down, that half-deaf fella down the back row, in the middle of the back row, can't hear what you're saying, you're wasting your time. So that's it, make sure they can hear you. And the other one was Ken Grenell, who said to him, before we play any music, get everything in tune. Everything's got to be in tune, dead in tune, otherwise you're not doing a good job. And that better be the last thing I say. Thank you very much.